Hello and welcome to Britannia. We are going to present you the basic functioning and aspect of this game, which is based on the famous board game Britannia, created over 40 years ago by Lewis Percifer, and it is one of the most famous board game, covering the history of the island of Britain, from the Roman invasion to the Norman conquest by William the Conqueror in the early 11th century. So the game has a very standard menu with a few options. We will just show you quickly the option menu where you can alter the music, the sound, the mouse sensitivity. You have for the low resolution or the low end machines, you have a possibility to remove the high quality lighting, which makes the game smoother. You have a button here, reset all message. We can have all the tutorial message back again in the game. You can change the language. We have up to 9 languages here. Or you can also change the screen resolution depending on what screen you have. You can read the manual inside the game by getting into the rules, and there is a huge 70 pages manual with a lot of information and a nice section with notes inside the device, so you can get it always at any time in the game. So the game has different scenarios which are listed in this section. You have a slider here to see all the scenarios. You have a tutorial scenario which goes along with you for one turn, explaining all sets, which is what we are going to do, but on the more traditional grand campaign scenario. Note that the tutorial scenario will go at the bottom of the list, but appear at the top of the list when it is the first time you play the game. So let's see the different scenarios. When you click on a scenario, you see the cover image. You have a tooltip which summarizes the situation and what is going on in terms of contest. You have the duration here. You have number of playable nations, number of players, duration, number of turns, and a rough estimate of the playing time. This is the same information for all scenarios. You have a little button here called Secret Ballot in one of the aspects of the game we will see later. You can either vote in public for electing the Bretwalda, which is the overlord of England, or have a secret ballot and where there will be a surprise. Here you have the different sides that you can play. The game is shared between 4 players. They were assigned by colors, and each player has a different number of nations, usually 4. The yellow player has 5 because some of them are smaller. And you can have a toggle button here allowing you to play as a human or a computer. In this game, I'll show you the red in computer and all the others, which could be the case when you play Outset as human player, and it will allow me to show you a few other elements. Each nation you can get with a right click the opening of the nation window, where it explains different elements. What are the goals of the nation? In this game, the purpose is to control a certain number of regions or establish some structure, in the case of the Roman forts in specific location. And you will see here the number of victory points. This is how you win the game, which are granted by control or occupation of these regions. And what we call other goals, which are like submitting nation, killing leaders, etc. A summary is at the bottom of the screen about your nation, and here you can see how many units. They have 2 different units and how many of each type they have. And the same appears for all nations, and everybody can see it. If you can see, for example, the Belgians, which are the opponents of the Roman at the start, what they have and the kind of units that they have. When they have leader, and information about the leader is also available. And you can see here also information about units, and the same right click feature opens the information about the unit. The information is always the same. It's life points, how many hits are needed to kill a unit. Usually it's one in this game. Attack and defense factors, that is the dice they need to roll to kill an enemy, whether they are attacking or defending. The movement points, it's how many points they have, and usually a clear region costs 1 and a difficult terrain region costs 2. And then the cost in terms of population points. Population points are representing the growth of your nation, and for each region you get 2 or 1 point depending on terrain. Then with 6 points you can buy a unit on average. And this is a force pool, that is how many units of this type you have available. Let's go back here. For example, if you take the Romans, you can see the same information. There is another information here, which is the to kill number, which means what kind of die the other side must roll to kill you. The region are very strong units, so unless you roll a 6, you can't harm them. On the opposite, they have no population point costs because they cannot be built. I mean, they are professional armies, so they appear by the reinforcements, and they can be reinforced from Rome, but you cannot build from the local place. So that's about the same for every scenario. We have a smaller scenario starting in the middle of the Roman times, at the time where the Wall of Hadrian was built. Artorius Rex is the King Arthur campaign, starting after the Romans left Britain. You have a very short training scenario called Excalibur. It is just 1 turn when Arthur and his knights are present, and you can just try the basic functioning of the game with this one. And the last scenario here for Normannis, which is the Wrath of the Normans, is the Viking Age, when the England start to be invaded from all parts, especially by Norsemen. So let's start again here, and we will launch the main campaign, and I will give you a tour of the interface before going into details to the movement phase. So during the loading, the game will be set up, and you will see, before you can play with anyone, a general entry in the situation. So you can see the whole map. The map can be zoomed in and out. You can travel through the map by either click and drag with your mouse, or using the arrow keys to go up and down. Keyboard keys works too. On the map you see different regions, seas, which are usually block colored with big names, big regions. Normally seas cannot be entered unless your nation has boats. We'll explain that concept later. And seas are called say neutral regions, that is, there could be presence of different nations in the seas without a battle occurring between them. This is different from the land region, where only one remains. That is, if you have nations, 2 different nations in the same region, there will be a battle. Land regions have a very simple style. Either they are clear, let's say plains and open fields, and apart from them there is nothing much else in, or they are difficult. Difficult are basically mountains or march. And if you do a right click on the region, then you have an information window that explains different things like the terrain type, if they have road or not, the income in terms of population points, and some particular explanation, like the mountain is difficult and it says it stops movement unless there are roads, and the attacker is penalized in battle. This is what you need to know about the map. You have see here a little drawing showing an arrow with a ship, which is a strait. This you can move from Devon to Quent, for example, by land. Straits stop movement. That is, if you go from here and here, then you have to stop here, whatever the number of movement points you have, unless there are roads and the regions are friendly. In general, you stop in 2 occasions. Either you enter a difficult terrain that stops movement, or you enter a region with enemy units, so it starts a battle, and normally it stops the movement. But there are some exceptions, which we will explain later during the movement phase. You see on the map who is kind of, let's say, occupying rather than owning the region, and there is a counter of the nation in place. The tooltip tells you who is owning what, and the number in the circle here is the number of units that the nation has in the region. So here we are at the start of the first one. We can see there are 16 Roman legions in the channel waiting to cross and invade, whereas the native tribes of England are more or less one per region all over the place. There are some filters and buttons that you need to know on the interface, but let's have a look from top to bottom. The big button here is the main menu, and you can either go back to the main menu, check the options, or save during the game. There is an autosave system, but you can save your game and just track my save here, and then it is automatically saved and you can reload it later. You can see the rest of the top interface shows the order of play of the nations. Each side controls different nations, and these different nations are all enemy to each other. I mean, they don't cooperate. It's not because you have blue nations that the two different blue nations would not fight each other if they end up in the same region. But of course you would control both sides, but this is a way of Britannia. And the order of play is always the same. So when a new nation enters, it's either at the end, or it may sometime go up into the order of play. But of course, a nation that has been eliminated from play because they have no longer any units in the game will be no longer presented here. Then you have here the phase you are currently playing, and you can see there is a tooltip on the phase which tells you the one underlined is the one you are currently in. So you can see there are 9 different phases in the game, and you will be able to see what's going on next. Here is the turn number, and if you click on it, this is the tooltip things. I'll show you. If you click on it, you will see the timeline. Know that you can move all the windows in the game by click and drag, which is quite convenient if we want to have a nicer view of the interface. And here you have hints. You can see you can recall hints just by clicking on the hint button here, if you don't remember them. The timeline is just the flow of the turns in the game. You can see here we have 16 turns, and all these turns have different events in them. Usually they tell you the reinforcements, how many units are in the game and where. What happens if there's something special? For example, the Belgians here will automatically reject their submission if they have been submitted. We will teach you about that later. And if they get reinforcement, other historical events which may have an influence on the game, and different other. Let me just turn down, and you can do it all the time in the game. I will remove the music because otherwise I won't be heard. So let's go back again to the other information you can see in the timeline. You can see the nation's shield when it is concerned, and you can see here icons like a little boat showing that the nation has boats, which means she can move by sea, or this torch symbol thinks that the nation is raider and they can make raids. So we'll explain what they are. You have at certain turns, not all the turns, but the possibility that the victory points will be counted, and then some other specific things like the Breitwalda appointment. Breitwalda is the term for the overlord of England. So it's a vote, and the different nations in the game vote for one of them, which will be appointed, and the one appointed gets extra victory points. And after turn 11, a process more or less similar but without vote is the appointment of a king. And the nation which receives kingships gets 8 victory points. And this is all the way down to the turn 16, which is the duration of the full campaign game. As I said here, we will see that later, we have a log which will allow you to see whatever happened in the game. It's very useful later on if you want to check if something really happened. Here, this button shows the current situation of the different players in terms of victory points, which we have here. At the moment, of course, 0 for everyone. And then the different filters, when they are not relevant, they are grayed out. And this one, just for your information, is the population points filter, which shows how many population points each region brings. Very simply, 2 for a clear region, 1 for a difficult region. So it's as simple as that, and on average 6 points to build a new unit. So that's about everything you need to see on the UI. This big button here is to go to the next phase, we'll use it, and this one is in case especially useful in movement. If you do a mistake, you can have a undo button, and each time you click, you go back 1 step back. So you can even cancel everything by just clicking, clicking, and clicking. So that's quite interesting and avoid making critical mistakes. So when the game starts, we have different stages, and we will go into them in the next tutorial.